Hi, thank you everyone for joining us today for our conversation with the Protestant Chaplain Dan Bell. Could you please share? My name is Warisha Siddiqui. I'm a student worker at the chaplaincy. Could you please share your name and pronouns, Dan?
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Dan and I use the he, him pronouns.
So our first question is, how did you come to be a chaplain at Tufts?
Great. Thank you. So I started at Tufts in 2016. This is my fifth year. And I heard about it actually through a colleague and friend who actually used to have this position as the Protestant chaplain. She's a fellow Episcopal priest. And she shared that there was an opening at the time. I was in Boston at Mass General at the hospital there doing a chaplaincy residency. And I was looking for the next thing. And that's how I heard about Tufts.
So why did you choose to pursue a career like chaplaincy? It's not a very obvious career choice for some people.
Yeah. So, like maybe many people who have discerned a call to ordained ministry, I originally saw myself doing sort of a traditional parish ministry, being in a congregation, and that would be that. And I am in fact serving a parish, an Episcopal church, half time. But all the while I've been at Tufts, I have found that chaplaincy has been so life giving for me, and I trust for others. Um, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm able to explore and try things that I can't necessarily do in the same way in a traditional congregation. It's the interfaith component, getting to know folks from a wide variety of backgrounds, having great colleagues representing different religious and philosophical beliefs, and being on a really vibrant campus where there's so much going on, and I get to meet students, faculty, and staff from literally all over the world. So those are just some of the reasons why I love chaplaincy.
No, that's just amazing. It's just like working at a university chaplaincy, there's just so many people and there's just so much opportunity to learn, even as an educated professional. So I've loved, especially you touched on the interfaith work. Like that's something that we pride ourselves at the Tufts chaplaincy of those interfaith connections that you're able to develop. That's amazing. Um,
Mm.
so our next question is, what is one ritual or practice or idea that's been on your mind lately? It could be related to the pandemic or non-pandemic specific.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I feel like it's hard for anything not to be related to the pandemic nowadays. For me, I've been thinking about Holy Week recently because it's coming up soon, the last week in March. And one of the days in Holy Week that's observed in my tradition is called Maundy Thursday. Some people call it Holy Thursday. And traditionally, Christians gather on this day to remember the Last Supper when Jesus gathered with his disciples. And one of the things that Jesus did that night was wash the disciples' feet. So many churches have the ritual of foot washing that night, where believers will gather and wash each other's feet, which is a pretty unusual thing to do, I think, in the 21st century West. And right now, I think it's maybe not wise to have that ceremony in many places. Um, so I've been thinking instead about what would it be like if instead of doing a foot washing, we observed hand washing, sort of prayerfully washing our own hands, and maybe even the hands of others that we're already in close contact with, loved ones, roommates. And it's something that we've been doing for a year now, nonstop, but to actually do it in a way that is sacred, in a way that acknowledges that washing our hands is something we do as an act of love to care for ourselves as well as to show love for our neighbor. So that's been on my mind lately.
That's a very interesting way to frame hand washing because you're right. It's kind of just been all consuming. You see all the posters on campus about remember to wash your hands, but to frame it as something like this is an act of love, this is an act of care for not only yourself but your community, and
Mm.
using that as kind of way to adapt to the times. It's very powerful things to think about. I really love the framework you gave.
Mm, mm,
So on top of that, what is something you believe in?
mm. So again, I'll go back to Holy Week, and the day after Maundy Thursday is Good Friday. And this is the day when Christians remember the crucifixion of Jesus, his death and his burial. And one of the things that I believe very much is that in the shame and in the agony that Jesus experienced, and in his very death, God also suffered. That God experienced the profound suffering, alienation, and indeed death itself. But that's not just an event that happened 2,000 years ago, but that God continues to suffer with all those who experience pain, isolation, despair, hopelessness, and especially those who find themselves brutalized because they've been marginalized. So because of the color of their skin, because of what they believe, because of where they come from in the world, whatever it might be, in the way that Jesus was the victim of empire, so those today too who are the victims of empire and oppressive political systems are also one with Christ in the crucifixion, and I trust also one in the redemption that Christ brings and that new life that comes on Easter morning in the resurrection.
Wow, I did not know that much about Good Friday, so I'm really glad that you took the time to explain that, and the idea of that you're not alone in your suffering, there are other people who care, whether it's in your immediate surroundings or this idea of divinity is something that I really appreciate hearing.
Mm.
So moving on to what you do as a chaplain, how would you describe pastoral care? Because I know it's a very big part of what a chaplain is and what they do.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's like the $1,000,000 question. Okay, how do you define this term, pastoral care? What comes to my mind is that it's the ministry of being fully present to someone who's seeking consolation, care, guidance, emotional or spiritual support. So that can look like almost anything. It looks like accompanying a person without judgment or agenda. So trying not to convince them to believe something or to do something, but just to be with them in their pain, in their questions, in just that sense of whatever existential experience they're having, exploring their inner world, finding meaning and purpose. And also, I think another important part of pastoral care is providing support so that one can feel more deeply connected to themselves, to others, and to the divine, if that's something that is part of their worldview, the transcendent. So all of those things are part of my definition of pastoral care.
Can you expand a little bit on like accompaniment? Because I know that there's a misconception when people go for pastoral care that the chaplain will have the answers to their existential crisis, which obviously no one has those answers, but you're there to walk alongside them to kind of find their own answers or walk alongside them on their journey.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's more about living the questions together than necessarily finding all the answers. Not to say that there are no answers to find. And I have found that without really saying much myself, just in the act of listening with care and concern, many have found the answers that they're looking for in themselves, and in that experience of connection, two people being together and being fully present. So it's chaplaincy isn't about, it's not a vending machine where you push a button and you get exactly what you want, but hopefully it's a way of discovering more deeply what's already there inside, the truth that we already are holding inside ourselves.
So when a student comes asking for pastoral care, what kind of things do people usually talk about?
Yeah, so like I said, it could be just about anything. Not surprisingly, often people will come to talk about a religious concern. So there have been times where students have come to me because they grew up in a particular kind of Christian household and tradition that they perhaps are then struggling with now as young adults to understand, is this really what I believe in light of my own identity, in light of who I know myself to be now, especially those who have come out as LGBT, and who have found perhaps that their home churches are not supportive of them. So that's something that folks have come to me about. Sometimes it's about other issues back home. While someone is away at school, life still goes on at home, and they might want to talk about the death of a loved one or something that's going on in their family or with their friend group. And sometimes it's about discerning questions about the future, making decisions about an internship or a job or what to do after graduation. So I think that's another really important part of being a chaplain, is providing that space where someone can discern, where they can make meaningful decisions about their lives in a context that's caring and supportive and non-judgmental.
Yeah, the idea of non-judgmental, it's like you are truly free to explore whatever is going on in your mind, the questions that you have, the decisions that you're making, and you have someone there to support you, which is just what I find so beautiful about pastoral care. And is there anything you wish students knew more about pastoral care?
Yeah, I wish students would know that it really is for everyone, that you don't need to belong to a particular religious or philosophical tradition to seek the support of a chaplain, to talk to us. We're friendly people, and we want to be connected with as many people on campus as possible. I really would hope that someone realizes that pastoral care is more than just receiving religious guidance. It's about talking about all of life, whatever that means for that person, finding meaning, discovering what the big picture is, and thinking about, okay, what is it that's weighing me down, or what is it that's bringing me joy? And can we dig deeper into that? And can we find the meaning and the purpose that is behind our everyday lives?
I can attest to the fact that the Tufts University Chaplaincy as a student is the warmest place, with the warmest people, and just like it's like a second home to me. I've absolutely loved it. So anyone looking to talk to a chaplain, you can literally talk to anyone and have an amazing conversation. So in your 5 years as a Tufts chaplain, what has been your most memorable moment?
You know, Warisha, I think this is the question that I've struggled with most when you sent me the questions, because it's really hard to pin down just one moment. But I think back fondly to what was an annual tradition, and what I hope we can revive again, which were the interfaith field trips into Boston, which were sponsored by Protestant Chaplaincy and the Muslim Chaplaincy. And so we would go in, we'd take the T into Boston and visit St. Paul's Cathedral, which is the Episcopal church in downtown Boston, where a Muslim congregation has gathered for over a decade for Friday prayers, Juma prayers. And we would go check that out, and then have lunch with the leaders from the Episcopal community and the Muslim community, and have a great time learning about what interfaith life and work looks like beyond the Tufts campus. Like, what does it actually look like, you know, on the streets of Boston? And I hope we can get back to that, because I just found it really exciting and really interesting to hear students' insights.
Yeah, as like a student, I did cafe, and going into different faith spaces and engaging with them was truly like, it opened my mind to just like the possibilities and the different ideas of divinity, and just like how we talk about them, but also like the similarities of the idea of like strong faith and community, which I only got to see because I engaged in those interfaith opportunities on campus. I really do hope we're able to have those again, especially in person.
Absolutely.
And what has been your favorite chaplaincy or community event at Tufts?
Well, I'm going to be a copycat and say cafe, as you mentioned. And yeah, the field trips, visiting different faith communities all around the Boston area, having a big group of students go into a great restaurant and having a meal together and just enjoying each other's company. It's really exciting, especially to meet incoming students who are experiencing college for the first time, and meeting these young adults who are so open to exploring different traditions and getting to know different communities, all the while starting off in a new school and a new stage in life. So I've always been impressed by that, and it's just been such a joy-filled time. So I hope we can get back to that soon.
Yeah, I really do hope we'll be returning to a little sense of normalcy and have all these like beautiful moments like being together. Um, yeah, really hope that happens soon. So where would you like to see the Tufts University Chaplaincy go in the future? You've been here for a little bit of time, developed some programming, but where do you want to see, like, else do you see the progress?
Yeah, that's the dream question for me. Where do my dreams lie? And recently, I've been part of this working group to talk about how to make better use of Goddard Chapel, which you see the inside of in my background and the outside of in yours. And it's a beautiful historic space right on the center of the Medford campus. And there's so much more that I think we could do to make it a hospitable and accessible space for everybody at Tufts. Those who belong to our established religious and philosophical student organizations, and everyone else, regardless of their affiliation. So that's a dream of mine, thinking about how we can more creatively use our sacred spaces. There's also the Interfaith Center, which is another, I think, sort of underutilized space where we could get creative and think of more ways to welcome the community in and do things together, especially interfaith collaborations among the different chaplains and the different student groups. So that's a dream that I have for the future.
Yeah, I'm hoping once these spaces are open to the public, we can start doing that programming and just letting students into the spaces. There's just something about being in the physical space of Goddard Chapel. Like, I've been there right around sunset, and it just kind of feels magical. And the Interfaith Center, I feel like it's just a strong sense of community because I've done cafe, because I'm part of the Muslim Student Association, and I've been utilized those spaces in that way. I really do hope people get to enjoy these spaces when they open.
Me too.
And our last question is, what is a fun fact about you that the Tufts community should know?
Well, I don't know if they want to know, although some might already. Every year for our Halloween concert, I don a Captain Kirk uniform, this polyester gold uniform from the original Star Trek series, this old science fiction show. And so the fun fact is that I'm what I like to say a recovering Trekkie. So I used to be a huge Star Trek fan as a kid. I used to read Star Trek books and watch all the movies and the TV shows. And I even went to this kind of Star Trek theme park in Las Vegas that used to be open when I was a kid, and had a motion ride simulator, all this stuff. So I'm not quite as fanatical about it now, but it's still something that I enjoy.
All right, I look forward to seeing you in your costume next Halloween. That'll be fun.
Will do.
Yeah, at the Halloween concert too, at Goddard.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Chaplain Dan, it's been an amazing conversation, and you gave such thoughtful answers. Thank you to everyone who's watching this. Is there any final words that you have?
Just that I'm so grateful for our conversation, and I hope that we can find more opportunities to have times like this where we can share about ourselves and help the community get to know who we are as the University Chaplaincy. So thank you so much, Warisha.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us.